Hey everybody, and welcome to a sequential art journey. Today we're going to be looking at foreshortening. So I've been practicing this a little bit lately, and it's one of those things that you definitely need when you're doing comic books and comic book characters, because you want your characters to pop off the screen. And one of the things that I learned was kind of interesting is we start with the basic shapes, right? We're looking at how things move in space, right? So as it begins to lift, we need to be able to understand that shape and the dynamics of its motion. So again, moving something in space, we're starting with this basic shape here. Now you can see it's starting to lift up, and as it goes up, we're seeing more and more of the face instead of just the top of the actual object. And then you'll see here, when you're actually just looking right at it, that's what you see. So this is a basic example of foreshortening. And, like I said, we're moving objects in space, right? So let's say we have an upper torso here, right? Rib cage, a little head. A character will have his arm here, and we'll see the fist and the thumb here. So how do we move that so that it looks interesting in space? Obviously, taking the same concept here and bringing the object this way, we now need to move it a little bit more. And so if you use some blocks again, now your block becomes more of this. And again, we'll move it down here just for picture's sake, but you see it again, right? And so that's moving this object in space like a hinge, and gives it more characteristics. Again, let's take an actual look at an actual arm, right? So when a character has an arm, throw the shoulder in here, the bicep, tricep, and let me move the camera just a little bit more here. Sorry about that motion. Okay, forearm, coming down here to the fist. All right, so we have a full arm. Let's lift the arm up this way. And so this is what's kind of interesting. Again, we're using this basic concept with these blocks here. So again, and this doesn't take like, oh my gosh, I need to know how every muscle moves and things like that. No, it's just a matter of moving the object in space, right? So now we're going to start moving the actual hand. And you see how it's just going to take this gradual upward climb, right? Everything kind of shortens, becomes more and more as the hand lifts. Okay, as you can see it. Bring the hand up here. You could actually even start with the hand. So now you know this is going to be here. Shoulder still here. And again, that hand becomes more and more. And you can see it there, right? This one's probably not foreshortened enough, so let's just go back and redraw that a little bit. All right. There we go, and you can see that the character is actually starting to move his hand up. And then, in the final shot, it's going to be all the way up. And what you're going to find is just some object behind it with the shoulder, right? And this is a great way to practice it. So I actually recommend, doing a lot of these right here before moving on to trying to do the shapes. I just find it a really good practice to do those squares every once in a while. So let's take a look at that. Also, you can do tubes. Let me get the camera settled here. Sorry about that. All right, and it's the same thing. Instead of doing squares, you can do circles. So it's basically, the tube coming up, because when you're constructing the body, you're using these shapes anyways. So it's kind of good to learn. And this is always going to taper back more and more as you go through. The size doesn't necessarily change of this portion, the circle, but the taper will always go back further and further and become more narrow and narrow as it goes away from you. So just remember that, right? Now, a second part of making things pop on the screen is definitely what's close, what's far, and then also, overlap. A lot of times when we see the arms and things like this overlap, these are very general arms, but let's take a look at something I learned. So let's take like a almost general overlap here. And this comes in handy when you're doing like multiple joints or things like that. Okay, so we're looking here. Now you can start to see as they overlap correctly that these objects seem to be coming at you as opposed to not at you. So we see there. Now you can do this the opposite way, which gives it a different direction. Same shapes. Okay. But takes it in a different way, in a different direction from you. So again, as you're practicing like I do, these shapes become handy, the concepts become handy. I'm finding that I use this idea here a little more, this overlap, especially if I'm doing something that's really, I need that character to come off the page. And we'll see that as I move on towards, doing females and males and the dynamic characters. But again, let's take a look down here. We'll do one more piece for this video, and we're going to do it right here. So what we're going to do, we're going to remember the tube concept, right? So we're going to throw a foot right here and the leg. Now remember, everything's going to taper backwards, right? But we're also going to use this concept of overlap. So we know in the shin and the calf comes up this way, right? Going into it, now we have that kneecap area, but we now also have the thigh, the quads, things like that. So it does have the taper going back, and it goes into the joint. There we go. Okay. So you see how that's used, that overlay. Okay. And there's that general concept. See, you can see these shapes. Well, I find them very handy. Again, here's your tube, but it gives it that pop that it's looking for, It looks like it's coming at you. It's not necessarily just a flat image on the screen. I apologize if that camera was moving a little too much there. All right. So I practice these on the daily just to kind of make sure that I am keeping the ability to move an object in space handy. I want to be able to put my characters into any position I need them in, and you'll see that as we go through some of the other pictures. Overlapping, again, a big part of the concept for making your characters pop. All right, guys, so I'm going to go continue to practice. Hopefully this inspires you to practice. Again, take a look. Hope you enjoyed, and if you did, let me know. Thank you very much for watching the Sequential Art Journey. Have a great night.